astrology initiates. So today we're going to talk about age in astrology. Um, we had done the Brad Pitt video, based hoping it didn't kick me out, Mom. All right. So I didn't have the Wi-Fi connected. So let's start over. Hello, all my rotation 411 astrology initiates. So today we're going to cover the topic of age in astrology and sort of external circumstances as well. So one of the first things I say when you receive your first reading from me and I look up a synastry chart is that I say, how do I put it, you guys? Um, and usually I kind of modify it to whatever the situation is, but I say that, I'm looking into the astrology, the synastry chart to see okay, if I can talk, it's a tongue twister. It's been very hot. It's been in the hundreds for like 2 weeks. Okay, so I'm looking at the synastry chart based on the two people, regardless of timing or circumstances. So it doesn't matter, whether they met yesterday or 10 years ago, whether they're married, divorced, separated, in a relationship. It doesn't, it can be irregardless, yeah, of third party situations. So whether they're each married to somebody else or one of them is, or that, one's in a relationship and one is not, none of that matters. It shows me how the two fundamentally get along and interact and what's written in the stars for their connection. So with that being said, it's a little bit of it's a nuance. I was listening to some kind of like political video earlier because we're all getting charged up for that. And it was like somebody had said something and then completely contradicted themselves in the same sentence. So it was like, I don't mean this, but I mean that, but it was the same thing, just in different wording. And so I feel like it could kind of sound like that. What would that be? Like an oxymoron type of energy, where I say it doesn't, the external circumstances don't matter, but here's sort of the caveat or the catch is that they they do kind of matter because I can see in the astrology if age is going to be a factor. Now, that usually is going to be indicated by some sort of Saturn contact, right? And this can be in the natal chart as well. I may have mentioned this before. Some of you may have heard, Venus square Saturn. If you have a hard aspect with Venus and Saturn, it's not recommended to get married before your Saturn return, which happens approximately around the age of 29 to 30. So, because you most likely will get divorced, and Saturn in that aspect is going to support you more later in life as far as love, which is Venus, and money and stability is Saturn. And anyways, um, so it is like if I see Saturn opposition Saturn a lot of times, and we did a video on this. Hey Carlos, thanks for joining. I'll answer any questions at the end. Hi Mohit Singh Rathore. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, or Rathore. So it's regardless of timing or circumstances, but it's like I can still see. That's what I'm looking into the astrology for, is I can see the circumstances. Now, some circumstances that I'm seeing are, they can confirm, yes, that's our situation. Other circumstances, it's like, oh, now it makes sense what's going on here, right? But I'm able to point it out because they're like, I can't figure it out, especially if it's something with Neptune, it's very mysterious to them, or even Pluto sometimes. So I'm like, okay, well, here's, the catch here. So it's like Saturn opposition Saturn can indicate really wanting to commit to each other, but having other commitments and obligations. It can also represent distance, although I don't know why Saturn does that, but I have seen it in a couple of like long distance situations where they're just they cannot leave their careers or whatever it is. So it kind of goes to work. Saturn rules the 10th house, the midheaven of career, and Capricorn. So it can come down to careers being the location issue, but it's not so much location itself. That would be more of a Jupiterian energy, or even Gemini, Mercury could maybe have a little influence on that. So I'll answer any questions at the end, but so basically with Saturn opposition Saturn, like I could see there that the issue could be age. It actually could be age there. So I say age ain't nothing but a number, and I haven't really gotten to it yet because I'm dancing around it. But with Saturn, he's the father of time. So he could, if there's like a Saturn, square Saturn or something, he could represent the fathers, because that also is part of the midheaven, not agreeing, different value systems. And he could also represent an age factor. I also find Saturn square Venus. A lot of times you'll see it in couples with wide age gaps, and usually the Saturn person is older, but not always. And it can even be with a couple. I see it in some couples married or couples that didn't work out within a year, where Saturn is the older one. There is every once in a while where Saturn is the younger person, but majority of the time you're going to see Saturn square Venus being Saturn being the older person. So with that being said, yes, age is a factor, but the way I read it in astrology is like, if we see, so if the couple, let's say they're 40 years apart, who cares what, for this example, we're not going to state, whether the male is older or the female. Thank you, I appreciate it. I did like fishtails today. So, I mean, it's kind of sloppy, but it worked out. So, um, so okay, now I've got to backtrack. I get distracted when I read the comments, you guys, but at least we're all interacting. Saturn squares, so age. Okay, so you could see a couple 40 years apart, and we're not going to go into like who's older or younger there gender wise, and so this would apply for same sex as well, where they don't have any Saturn squares, and age may not ever be a factor for them. Like, even though some people might gawk at them and judge them and go, why are they 40 years apart? Or especially if it's a Hollywood couple, right? People are going to go, oh, well, that's a given. If the man's older, especially. And that was what we were kind of talking about in the comments in the Brad Pitt video is, so if you want to check that out. But if it's a couple that's even like 10 years apart and they have some sort of hard Saturn aspect, then age could very much become a challenge. Squares are challenges. So I say regardless of timing or circumstances. So a lot of times I have clients come to me, especially if the woman is a little bit older, and they'll kind of have a hard time digging the birth year out of her for the man. And this has happened. So if this was you, I'm not calling you out. This has happened many, many times. It's pretty much 99% of the time this is what's going on, but the female client will come to me and I'll say, hey, do you have the birth years? And she'll say, well, I don't feel comfortable, giving you his or something because, it's his personal information or something, and then usually this happened one specific example, maybe two, they'll come and order again and go, okay, here, once they kind of see what we actually do and what we're looking at, more often than not, that's what happens. So it's not going to matter. It's only going to matter if it matters. So a couple could be a year apart and have, Saturn squares, where just being a year apart could be an obstacle. Trying to think what I might have. So I have like a Jupiter opposition with someone. It's their Jupiter and they're the older person. And Jupiter's also about reputation a bit. And it's about, how do I want to put it in this context? Because Jupiter's about a lot of things, but it's about like higher education. So, he's the general and Mars is the, warrior. So Jupiter's kind of the boss, even though he's a really nice boss and a jolly boss, he's still a boss, and he does rule the law. So you do have to obey kind of just the written rules, and Jupiter will reward you, where Saturn, you have to, and I say this all the time, but you have to sacrifice for a reward. Jupiter's just like, okay, if you're staying in between the lines, you get a cookie, but Saturn's like, no, you have to color 99 pages perfectly before you get a cookie. Okay. That was actually a pretty good, analogy. So anyways, if we look at that, then age really isn't a factor. But I want to kind of go into my notes here. So on the Brad Pitt video, one of you had commented and said, he would never go for Sandra Bullock because they were a match in the database. So if you haven't yet, do check out divinetimingdatabase.org. But we put celebrities in there for you to match with as well. So in the back, I was able to see this unusual match, Sandra Bullock and Brad Pitt. And we did a synastry video covering Brad Pitt with his two wives and her. Well, the two that are at the forefront, Jennifer Aniston and Angelina Jolie. So I'm just all over the place tonight, you guys. But with that being said, I just have to make it a discipline to get on here. So we'll kind of do a relaxed talk once a week. Then we're going to go through and do comment Q&As. And we're going to try to get in transits once a week. So I'm going to be a little more disciplined about this. But so they matched in the back, and somebody commented and said, and I'm sorry I don't have your name off the top of my head if you're watching this, but it was a good debate. Like, yes, a lot of men in Hollywood go for much younger women. So she was saying that's why Brad Pitt would have never considered Sandra Bullock, even though she's just a year older than him. But I would beg to differ, because I don't know if this is a specific example of it, but Tom Hanks and his wife, I believe they have a moon conjunction, and they have really good astrology, and they've been married forever. And I don't know, but in a scenario like that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if she's slightly older. And that's the other thing about Hollywood marriages, is they aren't really known to last, right? So men marrying younger women isn't really changing anything for them. But with that being said, age to me in astrology is not a factor. So you could be 20 years apart. A lot of times, like, twin flame or moon conjunction type relationships are in certain, with good Saturn trines and sextiles, are within like 3-year intervals. So 3 years, 6 years, 9 years. But kind of going back to my Jupiter analogy that I was using, my personal example, that Jupiter person's only 3.5 years older than me, and I've known them like all my life, but they always were just a little bit too old for me to really like click with, just kind of right outside my reach, until I had my son mature. And your son matures around the age of 36, and my son is in a wide conjunction to my Jupiter in Aries. So I basically, now, like, we're really tight knit, but it was like we were always cool, but it was just like we were just a little, 3.5 years isn't far, but a little too far apart. But I think it was more that Jupiter influence. Jupiter and Saturn kind of represent age and wisdom and knowledge. So it was like it was like that person was, I'm a freshman in college and they're finishing their doctorate. Now, that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. If somebody has like their Jupiter trine your sun, you might be a freshman when you meet your spouse leaving. So it really comes down to the aspects. It's not about the number. So again, you could just kind of reiterate what I'm saying, since I was all over the place. You could be 3 years apart, and age could be the biggest gap in the world for you two if you have hard Saturn aspects, or you could be 35 years apart and have perfect synastry and be married until one of you goes. So I don't feel personally in astrology, in synastry, that age is a factor unless we see an exact representation of it. Because you guys know that I look at the aspects between a couple and predict what the outcome is going to be based on the patterns that I've seen in the data I've collected amongst thousands and thousands of couples, clients, people I know. I'm always researching. I'll see, major trends, and usually when a client's coming to me, they're dealing with this thing, and that's why they're coming to me to ask me about it. So with that being said, age isn't a number unless there's an aspect that indicates age is a number. So age, again, but that variance is going to be based on the aspect. So Saturn square Venus, that Saturn person is going to feel stuffy and restrictive to Venus, even if they're a year younger than Venus. Okay. Or than Venus. All right. And actually, with Saturn square Venus, if the Saturn person is younger, that Saturn person could become quite a financial burden or obligation. Like, that's the kind, like, where, she pulls the birth control because she wants to tie him down as a father, because that's Saturn again. And so Venus is stuck with Saturn, even though Saturn is younger, because that's an obligation and a commitment and a duty to have a child. Now, anyways, let me just, okay, so does age matter regardless of time and circumstances? We covered that. And then the last thing I kind of want to go into here, and it's a little bit of a metaphysical talk, and I told you guys I'll kind of do this more and more, but I kind of touched on does age matter in some of the videos, and then I say like a 30-second snippet and we have to stay on topic. So I just kind of wanted to flesh it out a little in this video, bounce it around, kind of just give you guys my thoughts on it, and elaborate on it a little more. The other thing that I want to say is, so I can see an aspect will indicate, okay, this is going to cause financial stress in the relationship. This is going to cause, instability in a relationship. And generally, I can be pretty specific about that based on the aspects, but I don't want to just go on like a description thing. If you guys want to check out my definitions, you can go to divinetimingdatabase.com/stars. You can either create your own free private database with like birth times and everything and store them there online for free, or you can go to /stars or click free compatibility. Well, I think it says compatibility report. And if you don't have the birth times, and you can see all of my definitions there for the aspects. And I'm writing more and more in, and be patient with me because I've got about 25 million things going on because I'm Mars and Gemini is my excuse. So you know, there are some typos in there, but I just want to get it out to you guys so you can go look it up when I'm not available or if you can't get a reading from me. But if you want a personal astrology or tarot reading from me, check out rotation411.com. And it's best if you just register right up front. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, but that way it's really easy for you to order we set up the tarot readings in a new way. So you can upload a video if you want, and I'll upload one back to you in your, like, you have a portal now, a client portal. And you know, it kind of, I don't know if you guys watch any true crime, and I should do these too, but like Lori and Chad Daybell, they had like these portals. So I'm like, I don't know if I should use that word, but I like it because when I was going to college, I did a lot of online classes, so I use like the student portal. So that's like the client portal, right? Anyways, and it's also really easy to book an appointment with me for a live chat now, and we can just hop on and chat. Or you can book one of the astrology packages. It's all on there. Check it out. And there's a lot of cool free stuff. Like you can do a past, present, future tarot reading any time of day or night. You just click the 3 cards. So there's some fun free tools. But that's the end of that. I'm just letting you guys know it's out there. So basically, when I'm looking at the aspects and seeing is age going to be a factor or not, and again, it could be the couple is the exact same age and they have a generational Saturn aspect that's a quadruple whammy, right? Because they're going to have it in their natal charts if they're right next to each other with Saturn. And they could have it going both ways, and then age is still going to be an issue. It might be that they meet when they're too young to get married, and their fathers, because Saturn's their father, says no, you know, you have to have a career before you can get married. You know, that could be a like any kind of Saturn square issue. Even if the couple is very close in age, age could become a factor. So that's why I say it's regardless of timing or circumstances. Things like age, different third parties don't matter, because when we're looking at a couple, right, and say there's a third party on both sides, so, you know, fourth party, it's really going to boil down to, for those other parties, how their charts are interacting. So I tell people this, and this kind of segues into the energy thing I want to wrap up here with. But people, I think someone's coming. Yeah, so that's why I'm like getting tripped up now. But so you might see a really nice couple, right, in the astrology, and they've been together for a few years. And I say sometimes I'll see them drift apart if they don't have any Saturn, like even good Saturn, to stick together, and they just have really nice, easy contacts. It's almost like, oh, and I say this all the time, they'll kind of drift away and explore life for a bit, and maybe they'll meet back up, maybe they won't. But sometimes you'll see where these nice couples get interrupted, and oh gosh, how do I fit this in here? I have like 3 thoughts going on simultaneously, but let me make a note really quick and I'll go into it in a second. But basically, you might see a really nice, easy couple that splits up because, you know, the one of them takes off with someone else, and it actually can be a karmic person that they have a lot of friction with and terrible aspects, but they have to, you know, have some karmic lesson or play out some sort of childhood trauma with that person. And they, you know, that's why they're like good guys finish last and all of that. It's like, it's honestly, a lot of good people do get left by someone they had a really decent relationship with because of just someone needing to go and live out certain karmas and things, you know. And so I do feel like when it comes to maybe the divine plan, you know, we have free will definitely in free agency, but there, I do feel like there are certain milestones that we hit, whether we're avoiding them or going towards them or not, and some that we could have hit, you know, potentialities, so maybe we hit them but at different levels. I don't know, that would probably go into 5D. Now I'm going on and on, but back up, rewind. I really didn't sleep much, but I just got to get on here. So, and then, you know, Kathleen threw me off a bit there, but I don't know, I like when people are just blunt and honest. I'd rather you do that than, you know, pretend to. If you don't believe, that's cool. I don't know why you're here, but it doesn't bother me. So rewind. What was the rant? I was just about to wrap up. So you'll see people go off with karmics, and then you see all these, you know, these people get crushed and they think it's something wrong with them. And that's one thing we just all have to learn right up front. And this is just general dating advice. Whether some, and you know, they have it all over the internet and memes, but you know, somebody's approval of you has no bearing on your self-worth or value. And this is often how we get caught in the inward narcissistic relationships, is we're seeking validation, you know, from that one person that won't give it to us, right? So, you know, some people are fixers, but some people just need that validation. And so that's one thing that it's really easy for a narc to withhold. But anyways, so when we're looking at a couple and then we're looking at, any third parties involved, it's really going to be based on those third parties, whether that person, that individual is, the POI, the person of interest, is going to, which relationship they're going to ultimately choose. But anyways, with that being said, I do feel like we do kind of gravitate towards the same energies. And that's where we're going to wrap it up in a second. But I just had this side note, so I made a note. Marriage. So I'll see couples that have really nice astrology, like I'm saying, that soft stuff, really good, loving, Venus sextile Mars proper, and, their moons are trine in a 5-degree orb, and, they have their generational planets are all in alignment. They don't have any hard, crazy squares. And gosh, I'm trying to think what couple it was that I was guilt tripping the man, or I think it was my man's friend or something. Oh, I wasn't guilt tripping him. It was a good friend of ours. He was trying to figure out his relationship, and they really don't have bad synastry, and they're both kind of dating other people now, but there's children involved, and it's hard. They're still sorting everything out. And I said, if you would have married her, so that's the thing. And this is, I don't know exactly what it ties to, but I'm sure it will click. So if a couple has really good astrology, I generally say that they won't part ways, but that's not true because I just said that they might because it's too easy. They generally won't part ways if they get married. And I don't know what it is about that union and marriage, but I told him, I go, and he's kind of the one that made the lights go off about this, because I already knew this about married couples generally won't divorce if they don't have divorce aspects, even if they're kind of like, barely together and they're, pretty much living separate lives. They'll stay committed to the marriage, at least if they don't have divorce aspects, or at least putting it on the show. But he made it kind of click for me that it's actually marriage that does that. Because I told you guys this before, and shouldn't call my sister out here because I think she might know how to find my channel now. But I mean, I tell her everything anyway, but she had a boyfriend. They're born the same day, the same year, and they had their moons and everything conjunct, and they recently parted ways. And I can't say they won't get back together, but they had pretty nice synastry. So between her and my friend, this made it click. I go, you should have married her. And he goes, that's what she said. She said, I should have married her. And I'm like, well, I'm like, just as a woman, it's like if a woman wants to get married and I don't recommend you stick around more than 2 years unless, you're already in it and you're content. But if you're looking for marriage and you're with a man who hasn't talked about marriage or considered it in 2 years, I don't recommend to stick around. Because first of all, if you kick rocks, if he's the one, he's going to come get you. Oh, I kind of wanted to go into that with distance too. So, and otherwise you're leaving yourself available to someone who's going to take you more seriously. But anyways, and because once you're with someone like 10 years and you're waiting for that marriage proposal, generally those are the couples that are divorced within 7 years too, because it's just there wasn't a full commitment. I think there's a stat, like if a couple gets married within the first year, and it might have changed. I think Google now says it's 2 years, but when I was in school, I'm pretty sure it was under a year, or after 10 years, they're more likely to stay married. So if you stick around for 8 years, and then you get married, you might get divorced. But if you're together 10, it's like you're already so established, you might as well officialize it type thing, is what I think is going on there with the stats. But that's one of my favorite little stats about that. So I do find that marriage, if a couple has good synastry, they can kind of float away from each other because it's almost too soft. But if they get married, they'll kind of just stick it out because it's kind of easy. It's kind of like an easy street of marriage. They're not the couples that it's like, oh, marriage is so hard and I hate it. It's just like, they're like, yeah, we don't really talk. We don't really have anything in common, but we're married. That's my wife. Like that's how it can be sometimes. But sometimes it can be much, more rewarding and pleasant than that if you have really hearty, good aspects. So, the other real quick thing I just thought of about distance with a couple is, and I said this once before, I think, but like say the database, divinetimingdatabase.org, it's the dating app. You can get there by also going to moonmatch.love. It's also in the Android store. I think you have to type it in like 3 separate words, Divine Timing Database, to pull it up there, but there's a link on the website as well, and the links are all in the description below, and when I get time I'll tag them at the top. But yeah, I think someone's coming. 1 second. Okay, maybe not. All right, so anyways, it just will spook me out if I'm not ready for it. They know I'm down here, but let's see. I didn't usually I'll tell the house, the one or two other people, like, oh, I'm about to go live, but I just didn't today. So anyways, I just kind of, this can wrap it up here. So on the database, distance, right? So I wanted it to be where you guys could like do city and state, but right now we're working on like the same-sex couples portion as well for auto search. So in the auto search, you can only search by continent, but it's like if you're in Australia and you want to search in the US, you can just edit your thing and put that your location is the US. But if you're in Australia and you want Australia, you know, you do Australia to run your auto search. Anyways, with that being said, uh, if you meet someone on the other side of Australia or on the other side of the United States, or you find someone in another country because you kind of figure out what I just said, you're kind of frustrated, right? Because you're like, I met the love of my life. They're my perfect astrological match. We've been talking on the database, and now I live in Texas and they live in New York, and we're quite established. I This is what I know about life just in general, like before the database. My mom, her husband now, when they got married, like he had been gone 15 years. They'd been together when they were young for like, it was like 20 years later. She goes, how come you never came home? Because he still has family here. And he goes, because you never asked me, and he was on his way, quit his job. And well, he had like some pension or whatever, I think. But anyways, too much of their information. But and made it happen over here. Like took a pay decrease to come up and be with her. So sometimes it does take 2 or 3 years to sort these things out, just because of life, and you're both committed and you're going to do it when you meet. But sometimes when it's the one, things just have a way of working out. Doesn't mean they're easy, but they do. So if you both want it and you're pushing at it, you should be able to move within a year and be married within 2 if you want to get married. If you don't want to, I mean, a lot of people are anti-marriage these days. Or they're just like, oh, I'm never getting married and I don't want to. And I don't really know what the reasoning is behind that. Maybe MK Ultra. No, I'm just kidding. All right. But I didn't say that. So if I feel if it's the right person, then whether it takes a year or 10 years, and whether the goal is marriage or just, living near each other, or, you might say, but if it's the right person, why wouldn't we be in the same spot at the same time? Well, you never know. It could be someone that just moved from 3 states away. I hear man, especially used to hear really crazy stories like that all the time. It's like, oh, we met, right? I was about to move 5 miles away, and they moved by me from 3 states away, and literally I'm packing the truck and they offered to help, and we never would have met. So it can happen that way for some of you as well, I'm sure. But that, I'm talking about the database there, for the dating, for astrology dating, divine timing database.org. But here's what I want to say, kind of wrap it up, and I know I kind of touched on it a few times. I swear I'm more articulate than this sometimes, and it's kind of later than in the evening than I usually do this, but I do find kind of how I see these aspects for, like, is age going to be a factor or not based on the year people are born, but based on the aspects. So if you want to hear that, go back to the playback. But I do tend to find, like, a lot of you, and it kind of reminds me of like the metaphysical spiral. Like we keep going in a spiral and hitting the same points until, and the spiral keeps moving in and we're enlightened. And there's a lot of different ways that we can analyze that and use it as an analogy. And it's one of my favorite ones, probably because I listen to too much Tool. But uh, when we go on the spiral, I will find this. My clients, sometimes they come to me and they're like, okay, can you look at this last person I was dating? And we have some really good clarity and insight. So they're like, okay, can you look at my ex-husband too? And can you look at the one in between? And the one I was kind of thinking I'd hear from, but it's been a year, and so we'll be like, bam, 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 and we'll knock them all out. But sometimes they come to me and they're like, okay, here's the current person I'm dating, and we go over it. And then, that doesn't work out. And then they come back, maybe a year later, 6 months later, and they say, okay, I met someone new, and we do that. And, they just like going through this process because it usually proves to be true. So I had a client the other day. We did that. It was like the third time she came to me, I think. And I said, oh, I had a note about the guy before. And I said, it'll be a softer version of this aspect. And she goes, oh, well, I can see what you mean, but this one's not nearly as bad as that one was. That one drove me nuts. So it was like, okay, you know, she came to me when she was kind of up and down about it. It was actually Mars square Uranus she had with this, with the second order. And she came to me when she was real up and down. And he, you know, it's a real on and off, hot and cold aspect. So she, you know, he's kind of throwing her off, and she's getting thrown off, and so it's like 6 months later, it's like, oh, I'm way past that. That got old, you know, once she had a little clarity and perspective on it. And anyways, so now she went for someone, I guess I'm just going to call it out. I try not to go too specific, but it's so general, really, because this is in so many couples. The next new one had Mars opposition Uranus. So oppositions can be easier to deal with. You're still going to have some essence of that. So it's almost like she is slowly, I don't remember what her first reading was, but I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't go, like if I didn't go back and look and that was the worst relationship. And it's almost like as she's becoming more illuminated about it, she's getting kind of steering away from the energy. But it's often, before people are aware of this, we go back to those 5 past relationships over the years, and they're finding the same energies. Or I'll kind of be pulling my hair out because a client will come to me like, is this the one? And then it's the same issue as the last one. So in this way, I've noticed for me, I have a Mars and Gemini. Mars is your bad boy type. I've dated so many Gemini energies, you know, whether it be their Venus, their Mars, or their moon. And moon in Gemini is square my moon in Virgo, but it's conjunct my Mars. But it's better if it's the woman's moon, right, and the man's Mars. So I've been through this a few times with this Mars, this Gemini energy. I love Geminis, but I think the best placement for me is Mars. But I just said, after the last, because I think it was like, I dated a couple people with Mars and Gemini in a row, because I really enjoyed that one, but it wasn't working for other reasons, whatever. So I said, you know, dear Lord, please send me the one, but whoever it is, can you just make sure they don't have any prominent Gemini in their chart, because I just need a break for a little while. And my man now has Chiron in Gemini, conjunct my Mars, but it's an asteroid, so it's, yeah. But I was just like, okay, I need a break. But he has like a lot of Leo, and Leo's my 11th house, so that's wish fulfillment, you know. Whoever's in Leo, like any major planets, you're like, my dream come true, right? That's what 11th house can represent. It represents a lot of things, but that can be one of them. So yeah, so basically, if you date, you know, for a while, you are apt to kind of run into the same energies, and this is why we beat ourselves up and say, you know, it's just me. It's some kind of going back to the validation thing, like, it's something wrong with me, or, you know, I wonder sometimes, because I mean, even when the energies are very different, I have people treat me very similarly. And of course, you take yourself with you wherever you go. So that could be, you know, the way I trigger people just in general. But I'll be like, gosh, why are you behaving in this exact same way when you're such a different person? And I think some of that's just written in my own natal chart. So yes, some of it is on you. You might have this Saturn square Venus, and it's going to be hard to date when you're in your 20s, or to get someone to be official, even though you have a real desire for it. But at the same time, you could totally find someone that cures the things in your birth chart as well. You know, so it's like, if somebody doesn't have any planets in their 7th house, they themselves, if they just go meeting people that don't have any planets landing in their 7th house, it might be really hard to partner up with someone. But as soon as they meet someone whose moon or sun is in their 7th house, it's like, bam, this is my person, you know. 5th house, it could be, you know, if you don't have any children, or you want children and you don't have any planets in the 5th house, you may never have children until you meet someone who's got a stellium packing your 5th house. You know what I mean? So then you might end up having 10 kids you never would have had with anyone else on the planet. So that kind of goes back to my favorite thing from when I was young. Is there one, the only one, and it's predestined, and you're going to meet them no matter what you do, or you're going to miss out somehow and be alone, like the doomed fate? Or is there many, like a handful maybe, that depending which path you take are going to meet you down the road? And I'm a hopeless romantic, so I've always pondered these things. You know, my chart is Venus ruled Libra, and it's exalted in Pisces, the depositor. So, and that's in my house of work. So that's why I like to be a relationship coach and collect stats on relationships, whether that be sociology, psychology, and that's another video I want to do. I thought I would touch on a little more in this one if I wasn't so loopy, but how psychology actually ties into, you know, all of this, because gosh, it would just have to be a whole nother video like on Carl Jung and everything. So, I'll probably make that video soon. So if you want to check it out, like subscribe to the channel. But eventually someday I'll probably get around to linking it on here if you're watching this in the far out future. Let's see what else. So yes, I do feel like we can kind of learn and grow, but when we can't see the astrology, it's like a handicap, right? It's like a deficit. You're like, okay, I keep bumping in the same thing, but I don't know what the lesson is. And that's what astrology can kind of help people through. It's like, oh, now I get it. Oh, okay. Just having it illuminated. Like, say you date 10 people you have Mars square Jupiter with. And so all your relationships last 2 months. So you just think that you're not able to keep someone longer than 2 months, but the reality is, for whatever reason, maybe you had Mars square Jupiter with your absent parent, you keep trying to, you know, fulfill that role. That's kind of going into psychology now, with somebody that you have Mars square Jupiter with, but they're never going to be there for you, just like your parent wasn't, kind of energy, right? Because Jupiter can be that older person that we kind of idolize, but in a square to your Mars, it's going to be very hard to get on the same page. Even if it's a parent-child relationship, it could be very hard for the parent to be present when you have like Mars square Jupiter or Mars square Uranus. That's something we haven't really touched on before. So you might kind of, that's kind of like the daddy syndrome. Like if you have Mars square Uranus with your father, you might date people that are really flighty and flaky too, and that you have that with, trying to fix that in your own psyche with that aspect, but not knowing what it is. So that's why I'm saying the astrology, that's what it's good for, honestly, when we're applying it, aside from matching you guys in the database, is helping you remedy these things. Because honestly, you don't even have to sort through it all. It's kind of like the law of attraction. Like, you don't have to sort through it all. You just have to, you get what you want and what you don't want, is the premise of the law of attraction. You don't have to sort it out. You don't have to figure out how you're going to get what you want. You just have to focus on what you want, and then kind of going back to like Neville Goddard, don't immediately negate it. So if you say, I want $1,000,000, you can't immediately go, but that's never going to happen. You know, you have to be like, I want $1,000,000 and I'm so happy and grateful because I know it's coming to me. If you can't, but now I'm going into the law of attraction lesson, but you guys get the gist. All right, we'll do a law of attraction video soon too. So a lot of times just going, oh, okay, Mars square Uranus, this is what happened for me when I had the downloads in 2018 in many, many different ways, and then allowed me to go on to help clients in the extensive way that I do. But it was like, oh, okay, so if you realize, oh, I have Mars square Uranus with this person, now it's like, okay, you don't even need to even, okay, that means on and off. Okay, so it means it's a little easier for me to let this person go instead of holding on to them. Okay, now I'm open to other things. My mind is a little more open. Now you 90, oh, I'm just throwing a fake number out there, but like 80% of the time, I want to say, in the trends I see with my clients, once they see it, you know, and they don't double down, well, this is my person. And a lot of people don't. I'm actually surprised. Very rarely do people. Like, some people get really upset, like, oh, I thought you were gonna tell me this is my person, and like, I'm like, I'm not gonna blow steam up your, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna do that. So I don't, what do they call it, sugarcoat. Like, I'm not gonna, because the one or two times where somebody's just really strong, there is this is their person, and I kind of try to soften the blow, it ended up coming back on me, where I was kind of enabling them, you know, because they wouldn't see the light. And, or really, a friend of mine whose father is very successful in business says, you know, you can fire clients too. So it's like, that's what I probably should have done in that one or two scenarios, but it's like, I want to help everyone. But most, it's like, even if you didn't see the light, I still will be there to like help you through it. I've had people too, like if it's a narcissistic type relationship, it can take 3 years. You know, they say in abusive relationships, it takes 7 times to leave. So it can take 3 years before someone can even move their life around and get out of a situation. So I don't write anyone off until the blame is on me. Like, no, but I told you that wasn't your person, and you wanted me to keep supporting you through it. So that didn't give you my, I didn't condone it. What do they call it? Like that wasn't my endorsement for this person. I never agreed that this, just because you wanted me to agree, I didn't keep driving it in because I don't want to plant seeds. Like, maybe it will work out if you're this adamant about it and that's what your heart is telling you, or maybe it's a karmic lesson, you know. But anyways, so you know, I do feel like just illuminating the energy can often cure the issue, and then the next one doesn't have that aspect, or you know, and then I've seen people literally go from one to the next where it was really crappy, and then the next one's much better because they just kind of had to work through that breakup. Some breakups take time, or others where it's like bam bam bam, no, 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 this isn't what you're looking for. Oh, okay. And then finally something decent and they're happy, you know? But it's sometimes it's just going, okay, it's okay to let go of this. It's okay to not try to force this to work. And oftentimes what you're going to get, and I'm gonna kind of wrap it up with this, they say in the law of attraction, I read The Vortex is a book by them, and it's about relationships because it's a lot harder to manifest relationships than anything else. I want to say for me personally, it's like money is the hardest, and you know, financial stuff, because it's like you have a lot of preconditioned beliefs about it, you know. And then it's probably relationships and money are right up there, but you know, financial stuff, because you feel like, okay, I have to do things a certain way, so there's a lot of grooves in your mind. You know, it's good to have a work ethic, but at the same time, it can kind of block you from thinking you might deserve a little more in life. So that's kind of the trick there. But relationships, you can't manifest for anyone. You can only influence people. So the higher your vibration, the more influence you have. But if somebody's in a really low vibration, there's nothing you can do about that. You just can't lower your vibration and be frustrated with them. And sometimes that means that you have to part ways. And so that's sort of like a blessing in disguise, right? And that's why some people can drag other people down quite a bit, because you like really hook into this person, but it can be karmic hooks, you know? So I know I've been there too. So sometimes as we're working through that breakup, that's when the changes happen and the next person is the right one. But it can be sometimes where it's like, okay, nope, that's not it. Okay, you feel that again, you see that again. Okay, that's what you're that's you know, it's almost like when you're learning a sport or something, you kind of have to keep correcting yourself. Okay, okay, fix this, okay, fix that. Okay, now you're doing that again, you know, and then finally it kind of clicks and you're able to just drop that person, or you're like 6 months away from them now, and you've been working on, and they're like, do the work, you know. And I hate that, because it's like, well, what do I do now, right? But you've been just making these minor vibrational adjustments, and all of a sudden, you know, the next one maybe isn't the one, but it's someone like you can really enjoy, that's going to bridge the gap, and it might be the next one waiting in the wings after that. So, you know, we talk about divine timing, and it's like you could sign up tomorrow, or you could sign up today on divinetimingdatabase.org and have a match in there already, and you could email them and they might not write you back. And when we see that, the admin will kind of try to reach out to them as well, because you know, that's part of the guarantee of signing up, is that, you know, we're going to find you at least one match. But it could be like you come in a week, somebody else signs up and they see you match, and then they write you a message, you get an email, and it's like that person that reached out to you, you respond to, and you weren't meant to be with that other one. You know what I mean? And so things have a way of working out, but it's a lot of, you know, fine tuning and shifting and all of that. So now I was really, this was a rant. I should go back up and put like rant on it. It was very disorganized. I know some of you that drive, I drive some of you nuts doing that. I do keep notes, but I am a Mercury and Pisces square Uranus. So I'm like intuitive, technological, creative, and I'm a brainy intuit. So it's sometimes hard to translate it into, I don't know, any kind of sensical formula. All right, I'm sending you guys lots of love, blessings, and light. If you want a reading from me, I will definitely be getting some rest before I respond. You can check out my personal readings at rotation411.com. You can check out divinetimingdatabase.org. All the links are below in the description, and I'll tag them at the top. I'm sending you all lots of love, blessings, and light. Have a very happy rest of your summer. I'll be back sometime this week, I'm sure. All right.